Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you'd like to submit a story, feel free to do so in the comments down below, or send it to my email. Alright, let's dive into today's story now. Alyssa sat in the back seat of the car, staring out at the dense, towering trees surrounding the narrow road. Her younger brother, Ethan, played a game on his phone, oblivious to the eerie silence of the forest. Their parents sat in the front, their murmured conversation blending with the steady hum of the engine. Dark clouds loomed overhead, and the air was thick with the scent of damp earth. The road ahead twisted and turned, swallowed by the encroaching woods. Alyssa had heard rumors about this forest, a place where travelers often spoke of strange whispers, flickering shadows, and a house hidden deep within, a house that no one dared enter. And then, as if fate itself had intervened, a sudden thump jolted the car. "What's wrong?" Ethan asked, looking up from his screen. "Flat tire," their father muttered, pulling the vehicle to a stop. Alyssa's stomach churned as she glanced outside. There was no sign of civilization, no gas stations, no houses, and worst of all, no signal on their phones, just endless trees and a creeping fog that slithered between the trunks like ghostly fingers. And then, the rain started. Not a drizzle, a torrential downpour that pounded against the windshield, turning the world outside into a blur of gray and green. "We need shelter," their mother said, her voice tense, and that's when Alyssa saw it. Through the rain-streaked glass, she spotted a structure looming in the distance, a house standing alone amidst the trees. Its silhouette was crooked, as if time itself had tried to crush it, but failed. The entire house was cloaked in darkness, except for a single window on the top floor. A dim, flickering light glowed from within. Her heart pounded. "We can't just stay in the car," her father decided. "Let's check it out." Reluctantly, they stepped into the storm, their clothes quickly soaking through. The wind howled through the trees, whispering like unseen voices, warning them to turn back. As they approached, Alyssa felt an unnatural chill settle over her. The house was enormous, its wooden walls cracked and rotting. Vines clung to its surface like skeletal fingers, and the porch groaned under their weight as they stepped onto it. Spider webs draped the doorway like curtains, and the old rusted handle felt ice cold beneath Alyssa's touch. With a hesitant push, the door creaked open. Inside, the air was thick with dust and decay. The walls were lined with old, peeling wallpaper, and the furniture was draped in tattered sheets. The silence was deafening. No ticking clock, no scurrying rats, nothing. And yet, the feeling of being watched was overwhelming. Then, without a word, their eyes turned upward, toward the staircase, toward the only room in the house that wasn't swallowed by darkness. The flickering light beckoned them forward, and against every instinct screaming at her to run, Alyssa stepped inside. Alyssa's breath caught in her throat as she stepped into the dimly lit room. Unlike the rest of the house, which was consumed by decay and darkness, this room was untouched, clean, warm, and eerily peaceful. Soft lavender curtains swayed gently, despite the absence of any wind. The wooden floor gleamed as if it had been polished recently, and the walls were adorned with countless paintings and drawings. Some were portraits of a young girl with long flowing hair, while others depicted scenes of the forest, the house, and something else, a dark figure lurking in the background. Alyssa swallowed hard. "This looks like a child's room," her mother whispered, her fingers trailing over a dusty bookshelf. "How is this place so perfect?" Ethan muttered. Alyssa's eyes wandered to a small wooden desk near the window. Something gleamed in the dim light. She stepped forward, drawn to it, and found a ring resting delicately on the surface. It was beautiful, an antique silver band with an intricate design, holding a deep blue sapphire that shimmered under the glow of the lamp. It felt cold as Alyssa picked it up, yet somehow comforting. "Alyssa, we should go," her father called from the hallway. She hesitated for only a second before slipping the ring into her pocket. Morning arrived with a clear sky, and the family wasted no time fixing the car. By noon, they were back on the road, leaving the eerie house far behind. But Alyssa couldn't shake the feeling of unease. As they drove, she noticed something strange. The ring on her finger felt warm, almost as if it had a pulse of its own. That night, the nightmares began. She dreamt of the house, of the paintings, of the girl in them staring at her with hollow eyes. Whispers echoed in her ears, soft at first but growing louder. The words were unclear, but the desperation in them was unmistakable. Then she saw herself standing in the room again, but this time she wasn't alone. A shadow loomed behind her. She woke up gasping, drenched in sweat. The ring was glowing faintly in the darkness. Over the next few days, things only got worse. Objects in her room moved on their own. The lights flickered whenever she entered. And at night, she heard footsteps outside her door. Slow, deliberate steps that stopped the moment she held her breath. One evening, as she stared into the mirror, her reflection smiled at her. Even though she wasn't smiling, that was the moment she knew something was wrong. Desperate, Alyssa confided in her mother, who took her to the local church. The bishop, an elderly man with kind but wary eyes, listened to her story in silence. When she showed him the ring, his face darkened. "Where did you find this?" he demanded. "In that house, the one in the forest," she whispered. The bishop exhaled sharply. That ring belonged to a girl who lived there long ago. She disappeared mysteriously, and after that, no one dared enter that house. It is cursed. It binds the wearer to the spirit of its owner. Alyssa's blood ran cold. "What do I do?" "You must get rid of it," he said gravely. "Throw it into running water, a river, a lake, somewhere it cannot be retrieved. Only then will you be free." Terror gripped her chest, but she knew what she had to do. That night, she stood on the bridge overlooking the rushing river. The ring burned against her skin, as if fighting to stay with her. The wind howled, and for a brief second she heard the whisper again. "Don't leave me." With trembling hands, she threw the ring into the water. The moment it vanished beneath the surface, the air around her stilled. The whispers faded. The presence that had haunted her vanished. For the first time in days, Alyssa felt truly alone, and she had never been more grateful. Days passed, but Alyssa couldn't shake the feeling that something was unfinished. Even though she had thrown the ring away and the haunting had ceased, the memory of the girl's desperate whispers lingered in her mind. Who was she? What had happened to her? Alyssa knew she couldn't live with the questions gnawing at her soul. She needed answers. One evening, under the cover of darkness, she slipped out of her house and rode her car towards forest. The cool night air sent shivers down her spine as she neared the abandoned house. The moment she stepped onto the porch, an overwhelming sense washed over her. The door creaked open on its own, as if the house had been expecting her. Inside, the silence was suffocating. The dust-covered furniture remained untouched, and the air smelled of decay. But Alyssa ignored everything else and made her way up the staircase. The light in the upstairs room was still there, flickering softly. With a deep breath, she pushed the door open, and there, sitting on the old wooden bed, was the girl. She looked exactly like the paintings. Long dark hair, pale skin, and piercing gray eyes, filled with sorrow and something darker. Revenge. You came back, the girl whispered. Alyssa swallowed the lump in her throat and took a cautious step forward. Who are you? The girl tilted her head slightly. My name is Eleanor. Alyssa sat on the edge of the desk, her fingers tracing the outline of the abandoned ring that once lay there. What happened to you, Eleanor? The girl's expression darkened. You already know part of it, don't you? She murmured. Alyssa nodded. Tell me everything. Eleanor's eyes gleamed as she took a deep breath. 10 years ago, I lived here with my parents. My father was a wealthy businessman, and my mother was the kindest woman you could ever meet. We were happy, until the accident. Alyssa felt a chill run down her spine. My parents' car crashed on a stormy night, Eleanor continued. Everyone said it was an accident, but I knew better. My uncle and aunt, my father's greedy younger brother, and his wicked wife, had been eyeing my father's fortune for years. The moment my parents died, they took over everything, including me. Her hands curled into fists. They didn't want to care for me. They wanted to get rid of me. But killing me outright would be suspicious. So, they did something worse. They locked me in this room. No food, no water. They left me here to rot. Alyssa's breath hitched. She could almost hear the faint echoes of Eleanor's screams in the walls, the desperate pounding on the door that no one ever answered. How long did you? 6 days. Eleanor's voice was cold. 6 days of hunger, thirst, and darkness. I begged them to let me out, but they never did. On the 7th day, I died. A sickening silence stretched between them. Eleanor's ghostly form flickered. They thought they got away with it. They took my father's fortune and left this house to rot. But I never left. She looked up, her eyes gleaming with something dangerous. I've been waiting for someone like you, Alyssa. Alyssa stiffened. Me? I need your help, Eleanor said, standing up. I need to make them pay. Alyssa hesitated. You mean revenge? Eleanor nodded. They're still alive, still living off my father's money, thinking they got away with murder. But with you, I have a chance to make them suffer, as they made me suffer. Alyssa's hands trembled. The logical part of her mind screamed at her to run, to leave this place, and never look back. But another part, the part that felt the weight of Eleanor's pain, hesitated. They deserve justice, Eleanor whispered. Help me, Alyssa. Alyssa's heart pounded in her chest. She had a choice to make. Alyssa felt a cold shiver crawl up her spine as Eleanor's ghostly form stepped closer. The air in the room grew heavy, suffocating. Before she could react, Eleanor whispered, I need you. A sudden force gripped Alyssa, and darkness enveloped her. Her vision blurred, and an icy sensation spread through her veins. She gasped, but no sound came. Then, everything stilled. When she opened her eyes, she wasn't herself anymore. She could feel Eleanor inside her thoughts, her memories, her rage. Alyssa was aware, trapped in her own body, but she had no control. Her limbs moved on their own as Eleanor took over, and she had only one destination in mind. Eleanor walked confidently up the grand steps of the mansion where her uncle and aunt now lived. It was lavish, the wealth stolen from her parents evident in every golden fixture and extravagant decoration. The butler opened the door, frowning at the unannounced visitor. But the moment Eleanor met his eyes, he staggered back, his face turning pale. He saw something in her, something unnatural. She stepped inside without a word. Her uncle, Richard, sat in the enormous living room, sipping expensive wine. His wife, Margaret, lounged beside him, draped in silk and diamonds. At the sight of Alyssa, he frowned. "Who let you in?" But then his breath hitched. The air in the room turned ice cold. The lights flickered, and Alyssa's lips curled into a slow, knowing smile. "You don't recognize me, Uncle?" Eleanor's voice slithered through Alyssa's mouth, sending shivers down her own spine. Richard paled. His glass slipped from his fingers, shattering on the floor. "No, it can't be." "It is," Eleanor hissed. "Did you think you could kill me and live in peace?" Margaret shrieked, clutching Richard's arm. "She's lying. She's trying to trick us." But Richard knew better. His whole body trembled. "Please, I was young, foolish. I regret everything. Please forgive me." Eleanor let out a cold laugh. "Forgive?" With an unnatural strength, she grabbed a thick rope from a nearby curtain and approached them. They tried to run, but their bodies wouldn't move. Some unseen force held them in place. "No, no, please," Richard sobbed. "I'll give you anything. Money, property. Just don't hurt us." "You took everything from me," Eleanor said, her voice devoid of emotion. "Now, it's your turn." She tightened the rope around their necks. They screamed, they begged, they kicked and struggled, but no one came to save them. Minutes later, silence filled the mansion. The deed was done. As the last breath left Richard and Margaret's bodies, a strange warmth spread through Alyssa. She gasped as Eleanor's presence loosened its grip on her. The spirit emerged from her body, glowing faintly. Eleanor turned to face Alyssa, her once hollow eyes now filled with peace. "Thank you," she whispered. "Because of you, I am finally free." Alyssa, still trembling from what had happened, could only nod. Eleanor gave her one last smile before her form slowly faded, dissolving into a soft light that vanished into the night. And just like that, she was gone. As Alyssa made her way home, a strange sense of relief washed over her. She had helped someone, helped Eleanor find peace. For the first time in days, her heart felt light. When she reached her house, she looked up at the sky. The stars shone brightly, the night no longer carrying the weight of sorrow and revenge. She smiled to herself. It was over, and strangely, it was a beautiful feeling.